with you.
What's going on between my ears? Everyone seems to be so clear.
But I'm feeling foggy, I'm not feeling alright. Let's talk about it with Ronnie and Mike.
It's mental health awareness month.
Mental health awareness month.
It's mental health awareness month. This is the Judgment
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Judgment Seesaw. Once again, I'm your host, Ronnie Evans, and I'm here with my friend and another great member of the fantasy football industry, Mike Kash. How you doing, Mike?
I'm good. I felt left out not having a background, so I figured I'd throw the FFRPG dragon up.
Dude, my little egg guy is going to get terrified of that thing.
You should be afraid.
Before we dive into you real quick, for anyone that's watching, if this is your first episode, the Judgment Seesaw is a concept that comes from economics, and it's used to like gauge buyer decisions and why they buy stuff. But it's been parlayed by the therapy industry to help people in social awareness and understanding. And the idea is, in social situations, if you are judging, you cannot be understanding simultaneously. And it's actually a really fun exercise. Next time you're listening to someone tell a story, try to judge them and understand what they're saying at the same time, and you will find that you can't. So the Judgment Seesaw is just like a useful tool and a visualization to let yourself tap in, really put yourself into other people's shoes and focus on actively listening. Be more understanding, less judgmental. I want to understand you particularly, Mike. So before we dive into the mental health stuff, let's do a quick stereotypical, like what you got going on in fantasy football.
Yeah.
What should people know about Mike Kash in the world of fantasy?
Yeah. So I'm an editor over at Last Word on Sports. So if you're ever looking for written content, you can find me over there. I run the fantasy football department. So rankings, forecasting, all the good stuff, you can find it there. I'm the co-host of the Fantasy Football RPG podcast, which I just had a guest on. He looked really familiar to you. He went by Poopy Batman, though, so
Shut up.
couldn't figure it out. And then I work in the Fantasy Football Astronauts Film Lab. I do some writing for Rotoballer. I'm all over the place, but really, if you just find me on Twitter, then you can figure out the rest.
That's at FF Mike Kash on Twitter. And yeah, I was just on the FFRPG pod talking a little mental health stuff. That is linked in the show notes. If you'll click on their channel, you can go find it there. Give them a subscribe as well. My mom, just for all the viewers, I play video games, and my handle in video games for years has been Poopy Batman, which is the joke Mike was making. Hey, Mom. She knows that. It's probably what she's laughing at. Let's move on to more serious things like mental health. So for you, can you give me a little bit of a background on what your experience has been with mental health challenges and also anything you've observed with other people?
Yeah, I'll talk about myself first, which is the exact opposite of how you're supposed to do this. But a lot of the times when you're in the fantasy football industry, it takes a weird leap to go from digesting rankings, understanding rankings, listening to all of these podcasts, listening to all these things, and finally like taking the step forward and writing your own and kind of doing things that are different from the norm. Like you can say that you think that different players are going to do well, and then you also have to be willing to take on the criticism that comes with it. There's a little bit of like imposter syndrome. Like, what do I know that is better than anybody else? But then I started playing in leagues with my friends and realized that maybe I do know a little bit more than they do. Trading Cooper Cup for the 112. That's to Garrett if he's listening.
Come on, Garrett.
Yeah. But I just think that there's a lot to be gained just from creating content. I've made a lot of great friends. That's how we connected in the first place. And the negatives don't get outweighed by the good, but there's definitely some negatives that come with it. Continuing to talk a little bit about mental health stuff. So I actually have a little shark tattoo, which for the people there, it's for an old coworker of mine that he made the ultimate final decision. And I really wish that he didn't, and I think about him constantly. So I got that tattoo as a reminder to check on the homies. And then when I saw you were launching this, was an opportunity for me to kind of share a little bit about that. And just, if anything that I do, like if you're ever in a down place, like reach out to somebody, call somebody. There are people that care about you somewhere. And if you can't find anybody else, like slide into my DMs on Twitter. Like we will talk it out and it'll be okay.
Well, I'm sorry you went through that. It is unfortunately like it's part of the mental health field. It's something I have come close to doing multiple times in my life. I spent most of my 20s actually thinking about suicide pretty much every day. And so like it's tough though. And I don't want to dwell too much on your friend, but I've lost people to suicide. One of my friends in high school, I was at a boarding school and he took his life in the middle of the school year. That was pretty tough. And it's tough to see that for sure. It's also really, really hard to understand what that person is going through and the difference between a person that takes their life because of mental health challenges and someone that hasn't yet or hasn't thought about it or is going down that path is actually really not that fast. There's often a pretty quick and slippery slope once people get down in the dumps and truly like in a long-term state of depression, and I can attest.
Yeah. There's a lot of trainings that people can go to. I mean, I don't know if people are interested in this, but there used to be QPR certification. That's question, persuade, refer. It's an opportunity for you to get somebody. Like Mike is not qualified to be your therapist.
Neither am I.
I am qualified to get you to one and to try and help figure out what's going on and get you to the right person. There's also assist, ASIST. That's in a moment of crisis, what you can do, like make a plan to take care of the person, be with the person, things like that. So there are great trainings out there if you're looking for a way to better equip yourself, if you're not the person having those thoughts, to help people that are.
Yes. I love that you brought those up. There's also like if you just hop on Google and Google suicide prevention or like mental health aid, there is a laundry list of places with free hotlines too that you can call and just talk to somebody. And those are really, really important. And it's good for people to know about them. Moving away from like the dark depths of mental health, right? And mental health, it doesn't have to be that, right? It doesn't have to be like life-altering bipolar issues or just like something so extreme that everyone around knows that person is going through it. It can be super simple. You could, as you mentioned earlier, like doing fantasy football content, it could be kind of demanding. Go put out a really, really good article that you think you worked really hard on, you're excited to see, and then over the course of the weekend, everything you predicted for the most part goes wrong, and people come at you for it. You know, it affects different people differently, but I would be willing to bet that even the most level-headed and forthright people in the industry, for a little bit there, have a bit of a mental health moment where they are not feeling great about themselves or their ability to do things. They're angry, frustrated, and it's about like learning the emotions that are in between your ears, understanding why you're feeling that way, and working through how to deal with them in a healthy manner.
100%.
So moving away from mental health real quick, let's go back to fantasy football. So what like inspired you to pursue a career in fantasy football analysis, and how'd you get started in the industry?
Yeah. So I found myself really laser focused on career goals in my day-to-day career. And I was just so focused on this goal and focused on this goal and focused on this goal. And then I finally achieved it and realized that it wasn't everything that I thought it would be. Like, I kind of thought there would be this like big aha moment when like I'm fulfilled and like everything's good. And then I realized that I was 25 and I didn't have any hobbies. And all I really did is I would work out, go to work, hang out with my wife. And like, I love my wife and she's amazing and she is my hobby. And I treat her that way. Like, she is the most fun person that I can be around at any point. So no shade to you, but I'd love to go upstairs and hang out with her instead.
No offense taken, man.
Yeah. But it was just a chance for me to write about football. And I got lucky that Last Word on Sports was willing to give me a place that I could write about it and get paid for it. And I was like, dude, I'm making money to watch the Steelers and then say, wow, the secondary stunk this week. This is why they stunk this week. Like, I got a chance. Yeah. And then I moved into fantasy football and realized that I was doing an okay job of figuring out which rookies would hit and which ones wouldn't. And people seemed to like rankings and I had fun writing them. So it was a good match of a hobby that gave me an outlet with something that allowed me to connect with tons of people and maybe spread a little bit of joy with the goofball writing that I do.
Yeah. Do you find that fantasy sports has become like a bit of a reprieve for you from like day-to-day life?
Yeah, definitely at times. There was actually a moment a couple of months ago where I realized that I was spending so much time that it was almost like a second job. Like I had found
Yeah.
myself moving from the hobby into being laser focused on this thing and not treating it like the fun thing that it's supposed to be. And I'd like to think that I've taken a little bit of a step back and moved in the right direction there, that it is fun and anything that I get there is bonus. And that's all that should be right now. And if it becomes a full-time thing, then that would be sweet.
You're describing what I have always called the fantasy football degenerate syndrome, like
Yep.
just like the inability to put the boundary up and say, all right, I've done enough research. I got to move
Yep.
on. And
Yep.
it plagues all of us at time for sure. It's not unique to you or anyone else. I'd be willing to bet that every single person that I've had on this show has been through that.
I was watching all 22 of the Mac and I was like, what am I doing right now?
Yeah. I get that for sure.
Yeah.
You were talking a little bit about how you were doing like NFL level analysis. Initially, you
Mhm.
moved into fantasy analysis in general, but your expertise for NFL draft analysis, I think, is actually pretty well known.
I appreciate that.
How do you approach evaluating draft prospects, and what factors do you consider the most important in your assessments? This is not a mental health question.
Yeah. It is mental health because it's what drives me to try and make the right decision. But so it started with, and I still call this the dad test. There's times where they'll just look at a player and they're like, man, that guy's good. Like I asked about it in the AI thing. Can you watch all 22 tape, show an AI and be like, which player moves differently? Like there are just players that move differently than other players. So the first watch through, I just like to enjoy and be like, does this player move differently? And if not, then I'll go through and I'll be like, this is what they do well, this is what they do poorly. But like, I don't see them being a superstar at the next level. I'm starting to refine that a little bit more into, I use the fantasy football astronauts grading system. So they have like release, footwork, catch point, physicality, and those are for receivers. They have different things for different strokes for different folks, but each position has such different things that go into it, which is what's so fun about it. I can watch 2 hours of wide receivers and be like, man, like this guy has a better release, this guy has a bad release. And then I can go watch left tackles. And now I'm able to see, how are they at the physicality point? Like, how is their drop step? Are they able to anchor well? Like, you're watching the same game, but you're watching completely different things because football is such a position-based game. Like, most hockey players, yes, they are different, but they all need to skate. Football players, if you put a left tackle at wide receiver, he looks like a penguin trying to fight a polar bear.
Yeah.
And vice versa. You put a safety at left tackle, ask him to block Myles Garrett. It's the end of times. So that was a really long, I rambled a little bit there, but it was an opportunity to just share something I'm passionate about. So
yeah, man. Well, I think that like you hinted at, for me, I've always, when I try to get people into football that aren't into football, lots of ex-girlfriends be like, look, football's cool because it's like chess. Like, and if you can peel back from just looking at a bunch of really athletic dudes running into each other and take just a day to learn like just a little bit about like what this formation is, why the play is called there, what a run versus a pass versus an RPO is, all of a sudden the game opens up. And like you said, as your expertise gets more and more advanced, what you are seeing when you watch football, for me, gets more and more entertaining because I understand the nuance of what these 22 people are doing. And in the end, I still fall back on the sales pitch for football for me is like, it's like chess with superhumans. And you start and you make a play and you reorganize the board and you start again. So it's like chess and checkers, I guess, kind of combined. But it's a strategy game and it's really fascinating and fun as you learn more about it and get to understand the nuance and what you're seeing on the screen. So I can definitely relate, support that, back it up for you. And it sounds like that's kind of what like has helped propel your career forward. It's just like the addiction to learning more knowledge, getting more into the game, so on and so forth. Is that a good read?
Yeah. I realize that I'm at no point the smartest person in the space or the smartest person in the room, but I've been lucky enough that a lot of really smart people have taken me on their way. Like David Latham was my managing, he still is my managing editor at Last Word on Sports. Like he helps me with all of my writing. Jetpack Galileo is the one that like introduced me to their little like box scheme of how to evaluate players, and you rate them on a scale from 0 to 5. And it's allowed me to take something that was a little more like floaty and refine it so that I'm able to see this player was good in this way in this year, and then compare it to past draft classes, compare it to future draft. I'm now establishing a baseline that will allow me to really see how I'm growing and if I'm getting better year after year, which is cool to see.
Yeah, well, and that's speaking of professional responsibilities, people you work with, like managing, and you alluded to this earlier, getting too deep into the weeds and having to pull back. But balancing your professional responsibilities with personal life, I think, is essential for mental health. And so looking at fantasy football, like what practices do you follow to ensure that you maintain that healthy work-life balance that it sounds like you even slipped on a little bit at times in the past?
Yeah, I think it's the ability to say no. There was a point in time where every single time somebody asked me to guest on a podcast, I was like, yes, what time I'll be there. Now I check like, hey, sweetie, do we have plans? Let me check my work schedule, see what's going on. I'll still say yes, and we'll figure out a time and a place in the future, but it's more at arm's distance, and I'm able to schedule a little bit better that way. If I need time where I need to just decompress and be a goofball and like play Fortnite with you guys, I have a chance to do that. Or if I need to go like get a lift in instead of grinding all 22 for the Mac again, like I take opportunities to take care of myself or take care of my work or take care of both, and just finding out what your priorities are and being able to truly say, my wife is my number one priority. If she needs me right now, I'm leaving right now, which helps.
Yeah, I should have kept like a tally, because similar questions for a lot of people trying to get a lot of research done kind of with these interviews too.
Yeah.
And the boundaries,
Yep.
What do you do to maintain a healthy relationship with this field? Just about everyone. Chris Allen, actually, from Fantasy Life, we were on 2 days ago. We talked for like 15 minutes about boundaries and how important they are to be happy in this space and just like happy in life in general. So
yeah,
I love that you brought that up. The ability to say no. No, I can't. I actually went through that with you a little bit when you reached out about the show, and I was like, I want to, but I don't know if I can right now. Turned out I could. But example I've given people is Kevin Murray. I think he has one of the coolest podcasts in all of fantasy football. No offense to you or me. It's kind of a like professional deep dive into what people are actually doing, their stories and so forth. He asked me to get on the show 2 weeks ago, and that, like, I love Kevin. He's a friend, but it was big for me. I'm like brand new and doing content again. I was very excited. Like, that's good exposure. I need to go do that. But I didn't. I told Kevin, nope, I'm doing this mental health show this entire month. I'm focusing on that, launching my YouTube channel. Can we do it in June or July? Like you said, a year ago, 2 years ago, even for me, I would have been like, yep, I'll figure it out. Let's go. And so being able to respect yourself and put boundaries up to make sure that you maintain a healthy approach to everything is really, really important. I love that.
Yeah.
Speaking of, anything to add there before I jump to the next thing?
No, I really, if there's one thing that people take from that, for me, it's the priorities. So the boundaries are a tool to make sure that you're following your priorities correctly. So if you say like family is the most important, like make family your most important. When you're with family, put the phone down, like spend time, be active in the thing that you're doing. And then when you're writing or creating content, be active in that. Like I find myself when I was not being able to balance my time and priorities effectively, I was like scrolling through Twitter, arguing with Poopy Butt 99 about why my take was right. And I'm like, that guy doesn't care. Like, focus on what you're doing, enjoy the time of what you're doing. And if you wouldn't take, we'll talk about this, the impact of public scrutiny, but if you wouldn't take advice from someone, like, don't let their criticism get to you.
Yeah, well, let's drive into that real quick.
Sure.
Like being a public figure in the fantasy football community comes with scrutiny. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but how do you handle public criticism, and what advice do you have for others dealing with it, especially like to protect their mentals?
Yeah, I'll fall back on that phrase. If you wouldn't take advice from somebody, don't take like backlash from them. There's all sorts of opportunities for you to listen to all of the hate. Like there are so many people that they get home, they're grumpy, they're angry, and they just find themselves in a bad place and they try and drag you there with them. Like just be a good steward of your own mental space and don't engage with those. Rather find the people like Jagger May has been great for me. He'll let me know when I'm completely off base on something or I do something unprofessional. And at the same time, he lets me know how to build as a podcaster, as a content creator, and as all of those things. So find the people that you trust, find the people that truly care about you, and let them be the people that you take scrutiny from. Don't take it from, John Wayne 99 as he's just like yelling at you about something. It's like,
Right.
it's not that deep.
I that's great advice. Like I love that. I actually have never heard that. Like, don't take the hate from someone that you wouldn't take advice from.
Yeah.
It's really good. It
Thank
goes
you.
back to what a lot of people have said too. Like this has been more mixed, but some of the people that have been on have said I ignore all of it. I don't pay attention to it. Some people try to have intellectual discussions if the person seems like they're not just a troll, and be like, why do you think I'm so wrong about this? Explain your process. Let's see if we can figure this out.
Mhm.
In general, though, for me, like my move is mostly just to not engage or kill them with kindness. I'm like, thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate you looking at my content. I love you.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Yeah.
After someone says, fuck you, your stuff sucks. Like,
Yeah.
that's fun too. But the healthiest thing for people that struggle with anxiety seems to be universally just kind of ignore all of it. And different strokes for different folks, for sure, though. I think we all make mistakes as we move through careers. I certainly have made my own in relation to this industry and every other like career path I've ever pursued. But for you, can you share an instance where like you made a mistake and it impacted your, I wanted to say just mental health, but your feelings towards the industry or yourself? And just elaborate on that.
Yeah, 100%. So I like to have a couple of beers while I'm watching football. I think that that's a great time, and I wouldn't fret for anybody that does that. But I had a bunch of beers. I was watching the Steelers-Colts game, and it was the hit that took Michael Pittman out. And I was like, what's wrong with the hit? It's football. Man will be met. And like, was like getting in arguments with people on Twitter over it, and like really allowing myself to stoop down to a level that like, I just don't think that I should be doing that. And like, there's also, as I like sobered up the next day and like slept on it, I was like, maybe there isn't a place for that in football. I'm like, maybe I was just indoctrinated with you got jacked up. And like, I'm just like looking for big hits all the time. So really just taking a step back and thinking like, why do I feel so strongly about this? And like, am I wrong right now? And it's okay to be wrong. Like, we're always going to have mistakes and we're going to be able to learn from them.
I think that's fair. And that's a good point. Like, we're gonna mess up.
Yep.
Gotta learn from them. I think that actually Chris Allen, just to bring him up again, we talked a little bit about when I had him on. Like, if a lot of people are coming at you about something you said, maybe you should take a step back and try to empathize with them and understand why so many people feel that way. And instead of saying, I'm right, I know everything, they're all wrong, whatever. So I think that's good, as Toronto Brave said. Toronto Dave
thanks,
said,
Dave.
Very mature. That's the first time Mike's ever been called mature in his life.
Yeah, be sure to tune into my D&D podcast later.
I love that. So in relation to like mental health, just so I make sure I've got it right, I've had a few people on this show that don't subscribe to themselves as people with mental health challenges, but are supportive of the awareness, have experienced issues like you have with friends and so forth. Is that an accurate description of you, or do you have anything that you've gone to therapy for?
So I have gone to therapy. It's more of like in the same way that you get an oil change on a car, you just go in and you check out some things. Like, you want to make sure that everything's working right. You want to make sure that the fluid's going the right way.
Yeah.
And it's not that I think that everybody should go to therapy all of the time, or I think that everybody needs a therapist on like dial number 1. But at the same time, everybody is going through mental health problems, whether it is all the way to the point that people are getting tattoos about you, down to you just had a crap day and you're not dealing with it in a healthy manner. So everybody has mental health problems. It is okay to go get help. And it's okay to think that you don't, but like, just go get checked. Just go hang out and be like, hey, this is what I think, this is what's going on, and this is how I feel. And sometimes they'll be like, yeah, that's a regular feeling, no worries. And other times they'll be like, that's weird. You probably shouldn't, throw things. And it's like, well,
yeah,
my mom threw things. And then you like dive into all sorts of good stuff there. So there's always an opportunity to learn. And even if you're not learning for you, you're learning for coping mechanisms for somebody else.
Yeah, for sure. I like that oil change analogy there, because there's a lot of people out there that don't do therapy at all. And I think it's fine. Like, you don't have to do therapy, but I would be remiss to think that people couldn't benefit from it if they tried.
Yeah.
I really cannot think of anyone or any role where, I don't know, going to therapy once every few months is probably not going to hurt you at all. It'll help somehow.
And I was talking about this with a coworker the other day. It's not always organized therapy where you're sitting down and like you're on a couch and they have a notepad and you're spilling out your guts.
How my day went. Yeah.
Sometimes having a beer with friends and talking about problems, that is therapy. Like having a release for what is going on in your mental life and having a chance to vent, process, understand, or like really figure out what your coping mechanisms are and if that is a healthy mechanism or not. Those are valuable strategies. It doesn't have to be the like stuffy therapist experience. And then you're like worried if people find out. Like it's fine.
Yeah. I love that. And it's speaking of like release things, Hoove
Yeah.
Tube. Shout out to Hoove. You're in the group too. Like I put together a group over the last half year, started it with Hoove to do that, exactly that. Like I want to decompress. I want to get to know people in the fantasy industry as well better. And not everyone wants to just get on the phone and talk.
Yep.
We could just get to know each other while we play Fortnite and decompress at night. And that's super therapeutic for me. There are times where I'm like up until 1 a.m. when I need to be in bed, and that's not helpful, but you know, give or take. So yes, like therapy, Dave Kluge, when he was on, he was like, yeah, my therapy is like, I leave everything behind and I go hike mountains on the weekend. And that is my therapy. And so it doesn't have to be a shrink. Like you don't have to do that. I do suggest everyone do that at least once in their life. Just go see what it's all about. Try to find a good one and see if they can point at you and be like, hey, you should go work on this. Because a lot of the times people in your personal life won't notice those things. They're used to them or won't be willing to vocalize and say, hey, you have this character flaw that you need to work on. It's a tricky thing to tell someone. It's the therapist's job to help you work through that.
100%.
Hold on. Let me read these comics real quick. Who's making jokes? Hoove, I'm not putting your jokes on the screen. We're trying to have a serious conversation, you goofball.
We'll play Fortnite later.
Yeah. I need to take that off. This is not a Fortnite podcast at all.
It could be.
Could. So last thing real quick, you have in here a positivity corner and you have a bunch of shout outs. Before you go through all those, I just want to mention 2 of the people that you have listed here because I love them both too. Jagger May, absolute, just Jim, wonderful person. We became internet friends, I think is what you would call it, through DM over the last year. Super supportive. Jagger, if you watch this, I apologize for making you try to listen through Hyperion. Sounds like you did not like that book. That's okay. And then Chuck Bass. He was actually, we just did an AI show on your show. Chuck was like the first person in the industry to invite me on to talk about AI. And Chuck is such like a shining example of don't judge people by their social media presence.
Yes.
Like you sit down and talk with Chuck. I left my interview with him like, oh, I would have never known this guy jokes and makes like borderline inappropriate jokes as his brand on Twitter 24/7. He is like super thoughtful, well-rounded. That's just his bit. Yeah. And so a little bit of a judgment versus understanding thing, especially in the world of content creation. Just assume that people might be a little different than what you're seeing on the screen. There's a reason and a strategy behind most people.
Yeah. You just got to get the good traction. That way you get the clicks.
Yeah. Yeah. But positivity corner, do your shout outs. Tell me about all these awesome people.
Yeah. So Jagger kind of took me under his wing. He's helped me a lot. I actually have a ring light right now. So instead of recording in the dark, you get to actually see my face. Nice. I'm sorry to the people at home that have to look at that. Then Chuck, he was the second person to ever have me on his podcast. He's been nothing but thoughtful and kind, and despite his brand of being an absolute goofball, he is a hyper intelligent man who just had a kid. So shout out dads across America. Yeah. David and Drew from Last Word on Sports, like each of them have been just so helpful to me and just an opportunity for me to vent, complain about coworkers, complain about bosses, like truly just like trusted people in the writing space. I also want to shout out real quick, Jake Perry, genuinely good human being. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. His wife runs a dog shelter, and like, I could see Jake running the dog shelter. Like he just has every piece of his heart is available for somebody, and he's just a great human being. So there's all sorts of great people. I'm sure there are all sorts of other people that are amazing. I just didn't have enough time because we're already about to come up on it. But thank you to everybody that's been kind to me. Thank you so much to you, Ronnie, for having me on the show. I really this is a great topic, and I hope that more people listen.
Yeah. Well, hey, speaking of listeners, if you're watching right now and you're watching on Twitter, do me a favor. Go to my profile, go to the YouTube page for Good Guy AI, give this show a like and subscribe to the channel. It's a brand new channel, and I need you. I need your follows. Thank you.
Yes.
But in general, too, you can click on the show description when you get over to YouTube. Make sure you go follow the FFRPG pod and Mike and everything he does. And before we close it out, Mike, this will be the fastest episode of the Judgment Seesaw that I've done to date. So
look at us. Heck yeah.
Look at us.
We had to make time for Fortnite.
Yeah. No, that is not why. Any final thoughts for you just generally on the future of the industry and what you would like to see from the fantasy sports space in relation to mental health?
Yeah, I think it would take a big step forward if people would talk about takes rather than character. There's just so many times where it's you're an idiot because of this, as opposed to this was a bad take and this is why I think that. Instead of the this is a you problem, this is a take problem. And I just think that would go a long way.
I think that is great advice. Let's close on that.
Sweet.
Constructive criticism versus blameful, childish middle school criticism.
Exactly.
That way.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, on that note, it's at FF Mike Kash. Mike, I love you, dude. Great
love
friend.
You too.
Thank you for coming on the show. Mental
for
health
having me.
really does matter, and having people like you come on and vocalize that are not on the daily going through a super serious struggle in many ways, I think is more valuable than hearing from someone like me who is just speaking their truth. And so it's awesome. Thank you for doing this. I can't wait to get back on the RPG pod later on once Good Guy AI is up and running and getting into the nitty-gritty on stuff.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, what else is coming out from you guys over the next couple months that we can look forward to?
We got a couple of film studies on rookies coming by, so we'll have somebody on. We'll actually live stream all 22 and talk over it and draw over it and be this is what we're looking at and this is what's good. So it's a good time. We'll do some rankings, which is always important. We got to get you ready for redraft, dynasty, anything that you're going through. And then we'll hop into our team-by-team breakdowns that we do running into July and August. That's when football season's around the corner because we're talking about depth charts, we're talking about snap counts, we're talking about all the nitty-gritty. So, take care of yourself. And part of taking care of yourself is winning fantasy leagues. So hop over to Fantasy Football RPG and win a couple more.
Absolutely. One last question. Speaking of depth charts.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on Jalen Wright this year?
buddy. I love him in best ball. I did a film study, actually, if people want to check it out. It's on the Fantasy Football RPG pod. But I think that he is lightning in a bottle in the open field. I just don't see a world where they take Mostert and Achane off of the field just to give Wright touches, but it could happen.
2025 player right there. I agree entirely with your thing. I wouldn't shock me if Jalen Wright has a couple 100-yard games this year just by nature of that offense rotating
on 4 carries.
He's not going to be the focus this season unless Mostert gets injured or Achane gets injured. And if one of those two guys goes down, then of course wheels up. Jalen Wright, you plug a guy like that offense, he's good to go. All right. Selfishly, I just want to hear that go Vols, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
What's going on between my ears? Everyone seems to be so clear.
But I'm feeling foggy, I'm not feeling alright. Let's talk about it with Ronnie and Mike.
It's mental health awareness.